This is a demonstration for making unit-based learning menus to differentiate instruction. I'm your host, Kelly Stair, and I'm the author of VoiceThread for Digital Education and QR Revolution, which was released yesterday. You can find other webinars, including the rest of this series, at my website, angrybunnypublishing.com, and my email is down here. You can also find this PowerPoint at Angry Bunny Publishing. So very quickly, this month we've been going over creating a unit-based learning menu. What's a learning menu? A learning menu is a differentiation strategy. It's used a lot in the elementary schools. This is specifically secondary, is what we're looking at here. Also can use with elementary, but it's a secondary focus that we're working with. The menu creates student choices for different types of learning activities. And when students can choose, they're more motivated to get things done. There are different points or different levels awarded for different types of work or tasks. For this learning menu in a unit-based menu, we divide into sections. So you have beverages, appetizers, entrees, desserts, soups, and salads. Each of those sections offers students different options of tasks that they can do in order to create the learning activity or to accomplish a learning goal. And then those options are the tasks or activities that students complete in order to earn that set of points. Over the last few weeks, we've gone over all of the different pieces. We started with an overview of what learning menus are and some different tools that you can use to help create them. And then each of these sections we broke down into its own webinar. We did beverages, which was vocabulary instruction, appetizers, which was activating and leveling background information. We did the soup and salad section that was all about the supplementary texts and the tasks that can go along with those, specifically literary tasks or literacy tasks. The entrees, which is your anchor text, plus the tasks that go with that. And anchor texts can be novels, textbooks, a lecture series. And then we have our desserts, which is your summative assessment. Finally, today, we are going to look at a demonstration menu from a literature class. So if you're interested in seeing the rest of these webinars, they are available for free at angrybunnypublishing.com, as well as the PowerPoints that go with them. You can download them as screencasts, you can download the PowerPoints, or you can watch them online. If you check the events page, you can see the upcoming webinars. And if you go to the recent blogs or the online workshops, you can see the archived webinars for both this section and last month's section. So let's start with how to create learning menus. We want to start with a unit-based menu, and so there's a lot of stuff that's involved with creating a unit. And that should always be your first task, is to create this overview of a unit. Essential questions, if you use those, and backwards design is the way that I guide my units, and so I always start with those. Essential questions are the questions that you want students to be able to answer over the course of a unit. You can also do thematic units or content-based units. You also want to think about the skills and the content that students will be learning. The anchor text that you're going to use, whether that text is a novel or a textbook or a lecture guide. And then finally, the summative assessments and the criteria that you'll be using for that. Once you've got a general overview of the unit, then you want to break it down into how many points each section should get. I am a big fan of 4.0 grading systems, but everybody has their own grading, and this isn't about how you're supposed to grade or how to grade things, but what you need to do is make sure that you develop a grading system that works for you. Okay? And this is the point at which you would start assigning points or rubrics or whatever your grading strategy is as an overview for the unit. Both how much the unit itself will account for in terms of the entire course, and then within the unit how much each section will cost, or each section will score. Next, you want to gather your resources by the different sections, and I'll show you the tool that I use. I use LiveBinders to gather resources, but you want to make sure you're gathering those resources so that you have them available to start creating great tasks and learning opportunities. The next step is to address each section separately. So think about your vocabulary and what you want to do with that. Think about the anchor text and how you're going to work with that. Think about the supplementary texts that you're going to work with. Think about the background activation. Think about all those things separately before you tie them all together. And that just gives you an idea of how to differentiate activities. If you separate these sections out, it's a lot easier to make sure that you are differentiating by your learning styles, by literacy skills, and by student readiness. It just makes it a lot easier to see the differentiation happening. Finally, your last step is to present the menus to students, and presentation is huge. If you look like you spent a lot of time on your unit and creating these menus and making a nice presentation, students will really respond positively, even if it's a lot of work. If it looks like you just kind of threw things together and you weren't really caring about it, then students will also adapt that attitude and not care as much about it. So presentation is important, and there are a lot of really simple tools that you can use to make excellent presentations to students. So we're going to talk about creating a unit first. We're going to break each of those down, get a little bit more in depth. You want to create your unit theme as a part of your overall course. You want to make sure that you have, if you're using backward design to create your units, you want to make sure that you have good essential questions that are meaningful for students and that relate both to the content and to students' lives, so that students can really see the connections between what they're learning and how it will affect them in their lives. You also want to break down the skills and the content that students will be learning. These are literacy skills, technology skills, all of the skills for whatever course that you're creating. You want to make sure that you have an idea of what you're going to be teaching. This is helpful, especially if you're creating a lot of different units, to make sure that you cover everything that you need to cover. Not just content-wise, but also skill-wise. You want to make sure that you determine what students know and what students need to know. And this isn't just things like vocabulary or skills, but it's also things like technology tools or formats that you're using. For example, I have my students T4 all the time. Half of the students that come to my high school are coming from middle schools that use the T4 system, talking to the text. And so when I say T4, they know what I'm talking about. And they can do it immediately. They've had practice. They're comfortable with it. The other half of my students come from middle schools that don't use T4, that don't use talking to the text. And those students, I need to actually teach them how to use the reading strategy that we'll be using. And so think about what students know as far as technology, as far as strategies, as far as the skills that they'll need for your class. You can do that with very simple learning itineraries or inventories at the beginning of either a semester or the beginning of the school year or the beginning of each unit if you have different things that you'll be using. So just do a very simple inventory of what students know. And students are really good about telling you what they know and what they don't know. You also want to make sure that you have available for students supplementary demonstrations. You can do them in class, you can do them as videos or screencasts, and those supplementary demonstrations should show them how to use formats that are unfamiliar or strategies that they don't know, technologies that you're going to be using that they might not know how to use. And the benefit of doing these, for me, I love doing them as screencasts, because then I don't need to be the one that's telling them every time. I can say, if you know how to use PowerPoint, this is the assignment. If you don't know how to use PowerPoint, here's a video that will teach you how to use PowerPoint. And then I don't actually have to do the demonstration in class. Students can do it either on their phones or at home or on the computers during some free time. So that frees up a lot of my time. Next thing, you want to think about grading. And grading is a big deal, and like I said, I'm not going to tell anybody how to grade. So schools have different ways of grading, teachers have different ways of grading. For me personally, and this is how I set up my unit. I grade on a 4.0 grading system. And the reason I do that is because it's more fair. If you think about the number of points that you have, let's say students get 100% on one thing, that's an A. Students forget to turn the next assignment in, that's an F. Well, if you have 100% and a 0%, that averages out to 50%, and that's still an F, and I don't think that's fair. And so what I do is I'll make all the A's 4.0s and make all the S 0.0s, and then it balances out as a 2.0, as a C, and that's a lot more fair. So I use a 4.0 grading system. The total points are the percentages per section. So when you're making your unit and you have these 5 different sections, you can do a couple of different things. You can say each section is worth however many points, and then the section is, this is worth 20% of your grade, this section is worth 10% of your grade. You can do it like that. You can also give total points as a system. So you can say this section is worth 50 points total, and this section is worth 100 points total, and balance it out that way. It doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you're consistent, and as long as you tell your students up front how much everything is worth. Rubrics are a really great way to grade things that don't necessarily have right or wrong answers. And so you want to think about, if you want to give partial credit, a rubric makes a lot of sense. If you want to have 0 credit or credit, kind of a pass or not pass kind of deal, then I do what I call a high quality rubric. And as long as the student's work is high quality, they get all of the points. So it's not A's and B's and C's in that particular section. It's just, did you do this? And did you do it well? If you did it well, you get all the points. And I like to do that because it really lets students know that there are standards for high quality, and it's not about all the nitpicky stuff. It works really well for things like the supplementary texts and literacy skills and things that students are working towards getting better at. If they do a good job, they get all the points. Also, I like to offer opportunities for students to correct or fix things. And so if they present, let's say they're in a discussion, and one of their comments is not very high quality, instead of saying, well, you get a 0 for that, because it's either high quality or a 0, and say, look, this is the problem with that comment, here's how you can fix it, why don't you try again? And then students get an opportunity to fix and learn and get all of the points that they need to get, and there's no penalties for bad work. It's just that's not up to the standard, and so you need to do it over again. Another thing to consider when you're grading is that when you're doing learning menus and you're doing them for an entire unit, that can be very overwhelming because a learning menu offers a lot of options. And so if you offer all of those options for 5 different sections at the beginning of a unit all at once, students might be like, I can't do all this, not thinking that they're choosing from different things. And so it's really important, especially when you first start introducing learning menus to students, to start with one section at a time, to try not to overwhelm them or make them think, well, there are 5 things I have to do. Well, actually, you're picking one of those 5 things. And so kind of break it down. You might even consider, if it's your first time using learning menus at all, is just picking a section and starting with that. So let's say we do learning menus for vocabulary for your first unit, and everything else you just do like you regularly do in class. So you get learning menus for your vocabulary section, everything else works the way it usually does. And then once students know the vocabulary menu and they get familiar with that, you say, you know what, this unit, we're going to start with the supplementary texts also, and so we're going to do some of that with learning menus. It's a good way to introduce students slowly so that they don't feel overwhelmed. Gathering resources is important. And finding a way that you can organize your resources is equally important. I like to use LiveBinders, which is what my demonstration is on. LiveBinders is a software tool that is available online. It is free, and you create a 3-ring binder online. So you have main tabs, and then within each of those tabs, you have subtabs. And so it's a really nice, easy way to organize information. Now, the information, unlike a physical binder, which is just paper, your information can be websites, live websites, it can be videos, it can be documents that you upload, it can be images, and you can add text to your tabs, which means that you can add a website as one of your subtabs, and on the side you can write some text in how you would use it. Like, I would use this part of this, maybe I'll use it for this. So it's kind of like you make some notes for yourself. Think of it like the sticky notes that you would put onto papers into a physical binder. So live binders are just like physical binders, only they're all online, and you can use any kind of web feature on that. You can use websites and videos and all that stuff. Another way to gather resources, I've seen some great things on Pinterest because it's a great tool for organizing different online resources. I've also used a Word document or a folder in my documents file, and so I'll have a file folder online, on my computer that I use, and then I just add documents to it. Or I use a Word document with hyperlinks, and then those hyperlinks will lead me to those other resources. Another great way to gather resources, another tool to use, is YouTube, especially obviously for videos. But you can also use it to post like screenshots and screencasts and all kinds of things like that, so that you have things that are more video oriented. So you can use one or a combination of those tools, but I would definitely use something that lets you gather resources online. Finally, it's important to pre-assess what students know before they go into a unit so that you can determine exactly what you need to teach, and then supplement the things that they need in order to be able to do the unit. So your pre-assessments might include things like vocabulary. If you're doing a vocabulary unit and you have 25 words, you might pre-assess students on those words, and it can be as simple as rate yourself on this word. 1 means you've never heard it, 2 means you've heard it or seen it but you're not quite sure what it means, 3 means you totally own that word, you use it all the time. And then you just evaluate which words students know. If you come up with 25 words and your students already know those words, it doesn't make any sense to use those words as your vocabulary words. So you want students to have new words in their vocabulary. Now, if most of your students don't know a word, you might still use it as part of your vocabulary list. But if all of your students already know that word, or most of your students know that word, you might consider using a word that students don't know, so they're actually learning new things. Pre-assessing reading skills is also very important. Sometimes we get lots of great information from either standardized tests, or the year behind us will send up information about each student, but sometimes we don't know. So we don't know how well they read or what their skills are. Doing a standard reading assessment at the beginning of a semester will help you understand where your students are with respect to reading. In that way, you want to make sure that you have reading texts at their level and that you are working at their level to get them to the next level. And so if you end up with a class that has a lot of great readers, then you don't need a bunch of low-level reading assignments or reading tasks to boost levels. You can keep your reading assignments at a higher reading level. But if, on the other hand, you have students that vary greatly, then you want to create menus that offer things for all of your students. So students at the low reading level have some options, so students at the middle and higher reading levels also have options that challenge them and help them get better at reading. Same thing goes with writing. You might also pre-assess specific teaching strategies. Like I said with T4, some of my students know exactly what that is. They can use it, no problem. And some of them are saying, what's a T4? And so I might want to assess, if I have strategies that I use often, I might want to assess what my students already know about those strategies. You also want to assess their use of and knowledge of technology tools. You can do a simple inventory for that. You can do observations. You can do what you've used in previous units. But technology tools are important. If you assign something like make a PowerPoint or work on this discussion board or do a voice thread, if they've never used that tool, you're going to have to give them easier things to work with so they can get familiar with the tool. Finally, I like to use to supplement the different skills. If I've got a class of 30 and 25 of them know how to use PowerPoint, but 5 of them don't, it doesn't mean I can't assign a PowerPoint. It also doesn't mean I have to present PowerPoint to all 30 students when 25 of them already know how to use it. I like to use screencasts and then upload those to a YouTube channel so that students have access to them whenever they want. And so I can say, if you know how to use PowerPoint, awesome, here's the assignment. If you don't know how to use PowerPoint, I want you to take 5 minutes, watch this video, and ask any questions afterwards. And that gives my students an opportunity to be independent learners and to assess what they need and know why they're learning to do something. I also might use VoiceThread, that's VT, or a blog in order to post those videos so that students can see them. A VoiceThread is a very simple software tool for multimedia images, and so you can use videos, you can use images, documents on a VoiceThread, and then you can also have students comment on those. A blog is really nice because you can make active hyperlinks so that students can get right to what you need them to, and it also lets you organize the different things. Okay, we're going to show you the demonstration. This is a screenshot. This is a screenshot of my demonstration learning menu. I used the anchor text A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Beah, and this is for a freshman class. And so this is a freshman literature class, and they are doing a unit. Well, I'll tell you about the essential questions, but the overall unit or the overall course is all about personal identity and how we create our identity and how our identities change and how we grow. Because freshmen are at that time in their life where they're all about figuring out who they are and what they stand for. Okay, so as you can see in this screenshot, the LiveBinder has the main tabs, which are these dark ones across the top, and then each of these main tabs has a series of subtabs. And so if I click on these subtabs, obviously this is a screenshot, so it's not active. But if I click on these subtabs, then it'll take me to the different resources that I've collected. And this is the overall organization of a LiveBinder. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this. Once you download the PowerPoint, this link will be active for you, and the access key is Angry Bunny, no space. So hold on just a second, and I am going to open up this web page and start screen sharing. Okay, so here's the demonstration LiveBinder. Like I said, it's A Long Way Gone, and here's the learning menu. So here's how I've organized it. I start off, when I am organizing my units, I will start off with a general information tab. And this is where I put all the stuff that are great ideas or great resources, but I'm not quite sure how I want to use them. And so I've got a Getting Started tab here where I wrote down the main ideas for my unit. The overall course, the theme is Cultural Factors Influence the Process of Building a Person's Identity. So over the course of the year, we will be talking about how culture and your living environment affects a person's identity and how they view themselves. For the unit, then the theme is people adapt to the culture they live in or experience daily. Okay, so even if the culture that you experience daily is different than the culture that you originally grew up in, people adapt. And so it's that whole idea of being in a culture that's unfamiliar and how you adapt and become a part of that new culture. The essential questions that we work with for this unit: number 1, how do people adapt to extreme changes in culture? Number 2, how do cultural changes affect a person's identity and the choices they make? Number 3, what factors are most influential, either positively or negatively, on identity changes and choices? And then number 4, which will actually become part of the summative assessment at the end of the unit, is how can recognizing the effects on identity of changing cultures help you in your life? And so at the very end of the unit, students will do a little reflection on how the things that they've learned about identity and changing cultures will actually help them in their future life. I made a quick list of the skills and content that I was hoping to focus on for this unit, and I just keep it there as kind of a guide so that I'm making sure that my tasks align with the skills that I want students to work with. And then I'll go back to this after I create those tasks and make sure that I've gotten everything. So that's my overall. And then I've got a whole bunch of different resources, and these resources I don't use specifically in these, but I pull things from this curriculum and I put it into the supplementary text, or some of these psychology connections I use as part of how they will do their anchor text. And so I use these ideas, but these are just ideas and resources that might help me out. Okay? Then I break down 5 tabs, one for each of the sections. So I've got my vocabulary tab, that's beverages. I've got my background information, supplementary text, my anchor text, which is A Long Way Gone, and then my summative assessment. So for each of these tabs, the very first thing that I do is I start gathering resources. And so if I'm looking for vocabulary, I went and I found a Quizlet site that actually has flashcards for A Long Way Gone, and it's 25 words, and that's perfect. And so I might do an assessment at the beginning to see what my students know, and I might mix it up a little bit, but this has got flashcards for me, and it's got the definitions, and so less work for me. And if it doesn't work, then I can always copy other things, and I can always make my own Quizlet. Quizlet's a fantastic site for creating vocabulary flashcards. For appetizers, I found all of these different lesson plans on different websites, and so I just created a link to each of those. And that's my VoiceThread. And so some of these I have and use as part of the menu, and some of them I just hold on to because it's part of my resources, and maybe I'll use them at a future date. Once you've got your 5 tabs for the different sections, you can start creating your menu. And the menus, I'm going to start with beverages. The menus are fantastic if you make them look really sharp. And so I talked about, here we go. Oops, sorry, that's something else. There it is. So if you make it look nice, like a menu, your students will really, really love it. So that's what the overall printed out menu would look like. It's got your title up here, with some information down here, and then each of your sections. I'm going to go back to 100% so you can read what's going on here. So this is the beverages menu. On this menu, I want to first off tell students what they're going to be working with. So they're going to have 25 vocabulary words, and their job is to complete $50 worth of work. I like to use money because money seems to motivate my students a lot. Even if they don't get money, they like to get money. I hope you can hear the air quotes there. Like they love to earn money. They love to have money, and it doesn't even have to be real. If you wanted to do something like a Monopoly, actual money type deal and pay them for all the things that they sell, you can do that also. I just have them earn an amount of money, and they love it. They love money's better than points. And so I've got a link to the 25 words on Quizlet, and then they've got all these different activities. Now, for the beverages, I gave everything a fancy little name. So you've got your bottled water, you've got your juice, your soda, flavored coffee, and your smoothies. And so each one has a different price for what you get if you complete it. So for the bottled water one, just as an example, they need to review the vocabulary words through Quizlet and then take a multiple choice test. Okay, so it's a very easy mastery task. And then they'll earn $1 for every correct answer. So they can earn up to $25 just by studying the words and taking a test. Then you've got these other creative things that students can do. For this one, it's create a PowerPoint slide with the vocabulary words, include the word definition, an original sentence, at least 3 synonyms and antonyms, and a representative image. And then so for every slide that you make for different words, you earn $3. The next one is create a personal analogy for the vocabulary word. So this is for your more creative verbal students. They can create a personal analogy, which is just kind of like a metaphor. So you step inside the word and you talk about what the word feels, what the word thinks, what the word believes, what the word does. So you can do that. The next one is create a poem, story, or piece of artwork. And for this one, I put a range of money that you can earn for it, so $3 to $5. Most of it will probably be $3, but some kids will just go crazy, and so you might want to give them a few extra points. And then the last one, which is the most time-consuming, and therefore I offer the most points for, the most dollars for, is creating an educational video using the vocabulary word. So students will have to use a technology tool like Movie Maker, iMovie, and then they will create a video that will help other people understand the word. And I put some criteria for the video in here. And then I use this high quality rubric in here. And so I would actually give models or examples of what a high quality video would be. And then, so you've got their job is to earn $50, and then I put down at the bottom you can earn up to $75. And then this will end up being the points that are available for that. So that is, let's go ahead and take a look at the other menus. So for my appetizers menu, appetizers are the background information that I want students to access and work with before we actually start reading or doing work with the anchor text. Like I said, I've got all of these different resources that I can use, and then I created an appetizers menu. Click that, and I got all fancy and made them all different formats. You don't have to, but the presentation is important. Make it look sharp, make students go, wow, this is cool, and they'll be a lot more invested. So for my appetizers, students will need to earn $50. The first one is either a blog, a vlog, or a concept map. And this actually differentiates in itself. So students will explore the following concepts in a written, that's your blog, video, that's a blog, or a visual journal. And a visual journal, we just use a concept map. And I would give examples of all of these beforehand. I never assume that students know things, but this is a unit that would be somewhere down the line, so maybe April. And so students would have done a lot of these activities before. Okay? And then they earn $5 for each of the concepts that they create their blog, vlog, or concept map for. So we've got words that I want students to think about. And I would definitely do models for this, but we've got resilience, determination, social norms, efficacy, and survival. And so students would figure out what these words mean and then create either a written, a video, or a visual concept of what that word is to them, with examples and things that they can do to make sure that those words are really interactive for them, that they really make sense. So that's this one. And that's a lower level skill. It wouldn't take long. They're thinking about different things and making connections, but it's not a high stakes skill. So $5. Then I would have an in-class discussion, and this is for your more social learners. In-class discussions are fantastic. I would have them do it as a back channel discussion, which means that they would use something like Today's Meet to create a back channel so that students can speak out loud, or they can actually type in their comments that would show up on a board. And so they have access to participate in the discussion even if they don't get to talk out loud. So I say you need to have at least 3 high-quality comments, and I would definitely give models of what a high-quality comment is. And then I say support your opinion with support, an example, a reason, facts, or statistics, or resources, and those are some examples of things that they can do to make a high-quality comment. Then a discussion extension, and this would be $5 per statement. So we'd have in the discussion, I'd have statements, and you agree or disagree on a range. So you strongly agree, agree, strongly disagree, disagree. And then your job would then be to organize an argument for however you feel about that topic. So if you strongly agree, tell me why. And then the format is where I differentiate. They can write out their argument, they can speak their argument and record it, they can use a video or webcam. And I also add some creative/collaborative options because there are some students that will really go crazy and make something really special in this point in finding background information. So they might write a script or act out a skit or have an actual debate or write a song and perform it. And so I would extend that so that students can be creative in talking about those opinions. And that's a really good way to invest students in what the anchor will be about. Film previews. So the movie Blood Diamond is a great film to use with the text, but instead of having students watch it in class or do things with it that way, you might do a film preview. So you say, you really want to watch this movie? Watch it beforehand, and then here's an activity that you can do with it. VoiceThread is one of my favorite tools, and I actually have a VoiceThread, which it is live and it is free to use. The website, the URL is right here, and it says, so complete the VoiceThread with high quality comments. And VoiceThread is fantastic because it lets students comment via text, audio, or webcam. And so that differentiates how students are responding to the multimedia slides on VoiceThread. I might also do something with inquiry. And both of these are going to take a little bit longer and involve a little bit more autonomy. And so an inquiry project, research child soldiers, the Blood Diamond industry, and then present your findings. So this idea of pulling research and synthesizing that information and then using it to create a presentation that you can share with others. So that would be this one right here. And then, like I said, you earn $50 for an A, and then you can earn up to $85. I'll go through the other ones a little bit quicker. So for your soup and salad, this is your supplementary texts. Okay. Again, with the movie Blood Diamond, there's a scene in which a reporter is talking. She talks about how Americans and Europeans are culpable in this civil war because we're still buying diamonds. And if the demand for diamonds went away, then there would be no more civil war. And so have students watch that scene and then kind of answer this question in either a written, audio, or video format. And that's where you differentiate styles. Of course, you want to give good examples of how students should respond, the length of student responses, but that should all be done before. Also, articles with T4. I talked about talking to the text. Once students know how to do that, they can use it with lots of different articles. And there are tons of articles that relate to this topic. Each of those articles, like I would have a list for them to choose from of articles that I had already vetted and said, yes, these are excellent articles. And then I would have them use Scribble to annotate those articles online. And then I give some directions there. Cause and effect writing, one of the skills that my students struggle with is determining what's a cause and what's an effect. And so I would use the soup and salad with some supplementary text in order to help students distinguish between cause and effect and have them do a little bit of writing that way. I've got these two great videos from YouTube. One is called Culture of Fear and one is called Fear and Consumption. And I wanted to use those because they have great information, but I wanted to do something with literacy strategies. So for the first one, I want students to find the premise of the video. So what is the main idea that they are arguing in the video? And then I want them to find some outside evidence to support that. And then the next one, we talk about irony and how there's irony in the video. And so I have students use that literacy skill there. Finally, a global research project. And this is kind of a bigger deal, so it's worth a little bit more. Students will create an informative multimedia presentation that addresses the questions in the lab activity. And so they can use different formats to do it. I would definitely offer screencasts of how to use each of these so that students who didn't know how to use them can figure out how to use them. And then they need to earn $60 for an A in this. For the entree, your entree is the main anchor text that you're using. And so you want to make sure that students have options for how to process the information in your anchor text. Like I said, anchor text can be novels, but they can also be textbook chapters. They can be a lecture series. So if you're a lecturer, you might have 8 lectures all together, and students are involved in those lectures in some way. And so give them options for how they want to process information from that lecture. You might have several different note-taking strategies, or something with a textbook or with a lecture series. We're using a novel as our anchor text, and so these are the different ways in which students can interact and process information from this novel. The directions are that students will complete one of the following activities for every chapter, but it does not have to be the same activity for every chapter, so students get to choose. If they start with one thing and they're like, ugh, I didn't like doing that, we'll pick something else for the next chapter. Each chapter is worth a certain amount of points. 200 points is your 4.0. You only do one activity per chapter, so there's not a lot of extra credit. I guess there's 10 extra points there you could do. And then you organize and keep track of your work, and you turn it in your project interview. So students will have a day where they come and talk to me and show me what they've got, and that's when they have to have it done by. So here are the different options. We've got a response journal, and here are the directions for that. We've got a storyboard. So for each chapter, they'll create a storyboard, either physically drawing it or using software. There's a set of comprehension questions. This is for your more mastery style students. They want to know exactly what you want them to do. They might feel more comfortable answering discussion questions, whereas some students would be completely bored with answering study guide discussion questions. Literature circles are for your social collaborative students. So students that work better in a group, they might do literature circles for this. And they can choose to do literature circles at different points in time. So maybe they take the first 3 chapters and they'll do it as a literature circle, and then they'll do a couple on their own, and then they'll do the next 4 chapters with a literature circle. So you really let students kind of set their own reading schedules and standards and all of that. The last one is a discussion forum. So I would post an online forum for students to add posts and comments. And so this would be more like a college level class where you respond, you add quotes, you make connections, and you do it on an online discussion forum. And then you are responsible not only to post for every chapter, but then to comment on other people's posts. And you would, of course, model excellent work in those. Finally, we have our summative assessment, and that's our dessert menu. For the dessert menu, I pulled it as a project that students have to work on. And then I differentiated by how they would present their findings. So the project itself is this. You're part of an international committee for the rehabilitation of child soldiers. Your job is to present a course of action for the UN to take regarding the reintegration of children who've been soldiers back into society. Consider treatment, how to determine whether a child can be or has been rehabilitated, and the prevention of future child soldiers. And so their job is to create some sort of presentation that gives a course of action for how the UN should help children who have been soldiers, or whether they should help children who have been soldiers. And so this really allows for a lot of leeway on the student's part. I offer some suggestions for how students can present their information or their course of action. And I would have supplementary videos for all of these so that they would see demonstrations, they would know how to use VoiceThread, they could create a PowerPoint or Prezi. I would have demonstration videos on both of those, SlideShare. Video skit, if they're doing a skit or a debate, that means that they can work collaboratively. And so I might ask them, if they are doing that, to give me some previews of what they're going to be doing and working on so that I can talk to them about that. Essays or multimedia essays or an infographic. And then the last thing that they have to do is they're going to include a written or a video reflection. And this is where that essential question number 4 comes in. Not only will they evaluate their own work, reflect upon which parts are easy, which parts were hard, reflect on the process they used, both to learn skills and to work with software, and what they learned and how they learned best, but to also answer this question: how can recognizing the effects on identity of changing cultures help you in your life? And so it takes them into that question and asks them to extrapolate information on how they can use what they learned to help them in the future. And then it just gives some extra information there. And so that's the desserts menu. And the differentiation in that part of the menu is how they want to present their information. And that is the live binders. So here are some tips and hints for creating great learning menus for units. First off, start small so that students can work independently. If you overload them with information, it makes them very dependent on you. They're asking lots of questions. They're very, is this what you want? Is this what you want? So if you start off small, maybe with just a section at a time, then it lets students be more independent and explore more, and it'll really give you back better quality work. Also know your students. Not only their knowledge, but what interests them and what kinds of activities or what kinds of software or even what kinds of reading they would be interested in. And so you can do a lot of different things with units. If they like the more active lab type things, you might have videos of those labs for things that you can't do in class. If you know that your students are very socially conscious, you might have a lot more on that side. So just know your students. You can do that by having discussions, interest inventories, journals, and then academic background comes in all sorts of standardized formats. Make your essential questions and your themes both universal so that they apply to a lot of different situations and meaningful for your students. If it's something that feels like it doesn't have anything to do with them, students aren't going to be as willing to comply. Give opportunities for collaboration and creativity. There is nothing better than when students jump onto something and really own it. They make it their own. They have to be able to collaborate. They have to be able to talk to each other, discuss things, and they also have to have the freedom to create. And so if you say, I want you to write a paragraph, and they say, can we make it a skit? Say yes. Say yes, you can make it a skit. Just make sure you do the learning, make sure you accomplish the learning goal. So be flexible and let students be creative because they'll really own the material. Remind students that you're a learner too. That especially if you are just starting using learning menus and maybe your software doesn't work right or something else happens and you're like, oh, you can remind them that you are a learner too, that you make mistakes, that you work to do your best, and just like you give them opportunities to fix where they've maybe not done a great job, they should give you some flexibility and opportunities there too. And finally, encourage your students to make the tasks their own. It causes greater buy-in, and it really lets students own the work, but just make sure that you maintain high expectations. So if you tell students that they can do a skit, and the skit doesn't have anything to do with the learning goal, then you say, that was great, but it didn't meet this goal, you're going to have to do it over again, or do it in a different format. My name is Kelly Stair. I'm a writer and teacher consultant with AngryBunnyPublishing.com. If you like this presentation, you'll love my ebook, VoiceThread for Digital Education, which is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other ebook retailers, or through my Smashwords account. QR Revolution came out yesterday, yay! And you can still get that for $2.99 at Smashwords, or you can get it through Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Be sure to join me every Tuesday and Thursday for more great teaching with technology. And if you want to download this PowerPoint or see the screencast again, you can find it on AngryBunnyPublishing.com. Have a great day.